I began to get really upset and concerned because I couldn't breathe. So I walked away from my friends. I was trying to go home and get some help, and that's what triggered the release of my soul or consciousness. I left my body, and I actually saw my body fall to the ground. At that point, I just looked like a orb of light, just like a small round orb of consciousness with the faint light coming from within. Like I remember that distinctly. There was a light that was coming out of me. I wanted to know, okay, where did I come from? Like what am I doing here? What's going on kind of thing. And so like an experience that I had forgotten while I was living life, it like replayed for me, like I re-experienced it.
I want to welcome everybody back to another episode of The Soul Inspired. Today, we're speaking with Aaron Green. He has had a near-death experience. This one's a little bit more specialized in the fact that he also has some pre-birth memories. So I really wanted to have him on the show. And I'm excited to kind of find out a little bit more about you and more about your experience. I know a little bit, but again, some of it will come back as we talk. But I first
All
want to
right.
say thank you so much, Aaron, for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate the chance to talk about my experience.
I used to go way back with everybody. I'd say, okay, what kind of kid were you when you first were born? And like, who were you as a kid? And people kind of like that question. Um, but even if we go back, I don't know when the NDE was, but if it was adult or childhood, but let's go a little bit prior to that, or at least a couple of years, like
Sure.
who you were as a person and kind of like I don't want to say your belief systems, but I sometimes like to get to know that a little bit before the NDE
Yeah.
happened.
Sure. So my background before my NDE and my experience was when I was shortly before my sixth birthday. So I was a kid when this happened. But I was born in Durham, North Carolina in 1975. And when I was two, my parents moved to Virginia. And I was just a kid. We went to a Catholic church when I was growing up, but at that age, I didn't really have any firm spiritual beliefs or anything like that. I definitely heard of Jesus, and I had a concept of God. Like I'd certainly heard of God, but beyond that, I was just just a kid, so I didn't have any like firm beliefs or anything. I just had a little bit of Sunday school teachings, I guess.
Right. So you weren't someone that was going to church 3 days a week doing
Right.
you weren't heavily in a religious doctrine or anything like that.
There was church once a week, and I think at that time I was back in the kids area. I wasn't really doing church stuff, so
Right. Yeah, I always love that, right? The church starts and they just get all the kids to leave because they get loud. So it's like, hey, go to the back, do your, crafts.
right, right.
Okay, so you were around it, but it wasn't something that was being talked to you about all the, like it wasn't very strict. Because sometimes
No,
I've
no,
talked to people
definitely
and they've
not.
had strict backgrounds. So
No,
okay.
my parents were pretty I guess you'd call them moderate. Um and they went to a moderate Catholic church. It wasn't I don't know, old school or anything. It was kind of chill, and we didn't really talk about it a whole lot when I was a little kid like that.
I'm interested to see because when I talk to people who've had childhood NDEs, I always find them fascinating, and a lot of kids don't talk about it for years.
Right.
Some do, but not. It's not very common. It's almost like, what was that? Or some of them actually just think that's a normal experience. Like, oh, everyone just has these things happen, right? Like whether,
Right.
but then as they get older, they go, okay, maybe I've had something that not everybody gets to experience or has experienced, right? So, how did it? Let's start how it happened. Like, how did the NDE come about? Maybe give us some background on how, what exactly happened.
Yeah, so what triggered this experience? I was in a neighbor's backyard with some friends, maybe, four or five friends and my brother. We were just playing, doing kid stuff. Back then we didn't have the video games, the TVs, cell phones, all that kind of stuff. And we just used to run around the neighborhood. And something happened. I'm not even sure what it was, but it triggered like a really deep breathing problem for me. No matter what I did, I couldn't get a breath of air. And I began to get really upset and concerned because I couldn't breathe. So I walked away from my friends. I was trying to go home and get some help, and that's what triggered the release of my soul or consciousness. I left my body, and I actually saw my body fall to the ground. And so this breathing problem is what initially triggered my experience.
Wow. So, okay. I'm glad you kind of explained it like that first before we get into what happened. So you you're with friends in a backyard. Something
Right,
affects your breathing, whether that's something you're allergic to, whether it was something, who knows, but you had a breathing related
right.
asthma attack or something that affected your breathing. And then you
Yeah,
leave your body and you watch your body collapse from what's going on, from the trauma or whatever's happening within the body system.
right. Like that's
Wow.
how fast it was that I left my body that I could actually see it fall to the ground.
Before you tell us what happened, do you recall there being any type of sensation being like being pulled out, or were you just there 1 minute and the next minute you're looking over your body?
It was so fast. I don't really recall any specific sensation other than that the breathing problem was really becoming, very concerning for me.
Mhm.
But I don't remember like what it felt like leaving my body. It wasn't painful. There was nothing like that. It felt very easy or almost natural to leave to leave this body, and then being outside of it was kind of, I don't know, refreshing or felt like more natural than being inside the body.
Wow. And there was no fear around it at all?
No, no, not at all.
Okay. So there was maybe the fear of not being able to breathe was happening.
Right,
Um,
right. That was my concern. But honestly, leaving the body was great. It was a nice sensation.
wow.
It
Well,
was like
maybe,
it was like the body's kind of uncomfortable, and it was like nice to be out of it.
yeah, it's like getting out of an enclosed space. Sometimes I'm
Right.
told, and you're kind of like, oh, yeah, I can breathe again, even though it's not breathing. It's like there's
Yeah,
this
yeah,
feeling.
exactly.
So, okay, well, maybe let's work through what happened if you want to go into some details as to what happened through the experience, because it kind of you set us up to what happened. So there's no fear because you're already out of the body, and what what transpired after that moment?
All right, yeah. So I'll just get into everything I saw when I was outside of my body and how that all went. So I
Absolutely.
was just kind of floating there, next to my body, and I started to have questions. And as I would have questions, it's like the answers would come to me. Um, it was like I would re-experience stuff that I had previously been through. That's kind of how I would describe it. So the first question I had was, what am I? It was clear that I wasn't this human body. I was something different. And I could actually kind of like see myself. And uh, at that point, I just looked like a orb of light, just like a small round orb of consciousness with the faint light coming from within. Like I remember that distinctly. There was a light that was coming out of me. Um, and I, I couldn't really explain it other than as a kid, it reminded me of like an egg or a bubble, something kind of like that, just a small round orb. And then I started to have more questions. And like with each passing moment, it's kind of like I was becoming more alert, more used to being like that, more, I don't know, at home in that environment. It was a little bit like waking up from a dream, I guess. Only this life was the dream, and that was the greater reality I was waking up to. Um, but I wanted to know, okay, where did I come from? Like, what am I doing here? What's going on, kind of thing. And so, like an experience that I had forgotten while I was living life, it like replayed for me, like I re-experienced it. Um, and this memory, it started out, I was a round orb-shaped ball of consciousness, just like I was there. And I was with hundreds or thousands of other orbs that were just like me. And we were in what I would call a sea of light. It was just very bright, and there was a whole bunch of us, maybe a couple hundred or a couple thousand, something like that. And we just kind of we were like ignorant. We didn't know what was going on. We were happy and we were content and safe, but we had no background, no experience. We didn't know anything. To me, it it feels like it was kind of like a spiritual nursery. Like we were just beginning, I guess.
Hmm.
Um, and periodically, these treats would come, and there'd be like one gift or one treat for every soul, and they would kind of like come down, and every soul would get one, and it kind of made us happy. As a kid, it reminded me of like getting a cookie, something that just kind of makes you a little bit happy, but you don't need it or anything. Um, but one time there was one fewer of these gifts that came down than there were souls in the group, and we all knew it. We all understood that there was not enough for everybody, and so I made the conscious decision. I'm just going to go without, so that all these other souls that they're just like me and they want one just as much as I do. So I'm just going to pass on it and let everyone else around me have it. And when the last treat came to the last soul, I was very gently lifted up out of this group, and the care with which I was lifted was really noticeable. Just very gently picked up and like removed from the group. And like as I was being picked up, I was contacted telepathically, like a mind-to-mind communication. And it was this much more powerful entity that was contacting me. And basically, he said that this entity said, what I did was very important. Giving up something that I wanted for those around me was very important. And it indicated I was ready for something. And this entity explained that it was my creator and I was very much loved and cared for. And I was very important. And I don't just mean me, but like all these other souls that were with me also. We were all very important and very much cared for and loved. And this entity, who I just call God for simplicity, explained that there was a fantastic existence in store for us. Like being created, existing was absolutely wonderful. It was a fantastic thing, and I was really going to enjoy existing.
Hmm.
But in order to really get that enjoyment, I was going to need to go through something difficult to allow me to enjoy my existence, and it would be very, very brief, but it was necessary so that I could enjoy the universe, enjoy existing or whatever. And I was like, okay, I guess that sounds reasonable. Um, but couldn't you just change me and make me however I need to be so that I don't need to go through some sort of difficult thing? Um, and God said, yes, absolutely. He was fully capable of changing me in any way he needed to, any way he wanted to. But we were created with free will, and free will was critically important to the very reason we were created in the first place. And if he forcibly changed me, it would violate our free will. So instead of forcibly changing me and making me how I needed to be, we were all created simple with free will. And there was kind of like an education or training program that would allow us um, to grow and learn so that we could really enjoy our existence. And he went on to explain basically that God is loving, kind, compassionate, honest, has integrity, is generous, is forgiving, like all these positive traits. Like that's what God is. And for us to really enjoy our existence and appreciate just being existing, we needed to freely choose those same traits for ourselves. God wasn't going to like force them on us. Instead, he set up this training program so that we could learn for ourselves the importance of these traits.
Hmm.
And I was like, okay, I guess that sounds reasonable. So I accepted the explanation, and God was very pleased with that and asked, before you go on this training or whatever you want to call it, before you go on this difficult journey, do you want to see my face? And I said, okay, sure. And so I had been looking at this group of souls that I was with the entire time, and my attention turned, and I was facing this huge sun-like entity, and it looked kind of like a giant sun, only in the sun were like millions and millions and millions of these like balls of consciousness, like a whole bunch of them. I don't even know how many. Um, but some of them like came to the surface, and I could clearly see their face, and they uh they welcomed me into existence. They were like they were really excited that I was coming into existence, and they were really happy because I was going to join them someday. They basically explained that uh, each soul was unique and irreplaceable, and that when I joined them, I would be bringing something that no other soul could replicate. And even though they were like extremely happy as they were, when I joined them, they'd be like even a little bit happier. And so they were really excited about that prospect. Um, and they assured me that I would join them someday, basically. But then God said, "Okay, are you ready to go on this difficult experience?" And I said, "Yes, I'm ready." And it's like, bam, very quickly, excuse me, very quickly I was leaving. I was going away to a different realm. It's like I was zooming away from that scene, but God maintained like mental contact with me, and we were still communicating. And we started looking at a whole bunch of different planets I could go to. There was like thousands and thousands of different planets I might go to, and it was the same kind of situation in every planet. I would be a soul that would be inside some sort of physical body, and I would be able to have the experience I needed so that I could learn the lessons necessary uh, to become uh, I don't know, I guess a wise soul. But eventually we got to Earth, and there's something about this place or being a person, and I was absolutely positive this is where I wanted to be. I was certain that this was the right place for me.
Hmm.
And so with that, my question was answered, and it's like I was back to floating next to next to my body. And so I had another question. I wanted to know, okay, well, I understand why I'm here, but why am I Aaron? Why am I Aaron Thomas Green? Why am I this person? Why am I living this particular life? And again, I got to re-experience what I had been through to become Aaron, and that's how my question was answered. I re-experienced something I'd been through before, but had forgotten while I was living this life. Um, and in the first experience I described, I had been a very new, simple soul with no experience. But now in in this new experience that I had again, I was a much more experienced soul. It was obvious I had lived many lives.
Mhm.
It's like it wasn't my first life. Um, I'd been around the block, so to speak. Um, and when it started, I was a very like I was upset, I was frustrated, I was kind of like mentally disheveled. I was filled with regret. Like I felt like I had done something wrong that I should not have done. And I was really upset about that. And I had these guides that were like helping me. They were trying to help get me straightened out. And they said that they wanted to send me back to Earth. And I responded that I'm not going back to Earth and you can't make me. And my guide said, okay, you're right. We can't make you, but what you need to go back to get yourself straightened out. But that's kind of the gist of what they were telling me. Um, but I said, I'm just going to stay here. I'm not going back to Earth. But if I remained in that state, like I would have stayed like disheveled and confused and unhappy.
Mhm.
And coming back to Earth would allow me to like get myself straightened out.
Right.
So my guides took a different approach. They basically said, well, if you go back to Earth, you can help others. And would it be okay if we showed you some of the souls that you could help if you went back to Earth? And that kind of like triggered something deeper for me. It like triggered, um, I don't know, somehow I was excited about the prospect of helping others. And so I said, basically, I agreed with the plan that, okay, you can show me the souls that I might help if I went back. And so they did. They showed me some souls that I might help if I went back to Earth. And that really triggered something in me. I really like that idea that maybe I could help someone else. And so I agreed, okay, maybe we could look at the possibilities. We could look at, what it would look like if I went back to Earth. Not that I was agreeing to go back to Earth. And so they showed me a life I could have. And this would be a very like angry life. I would be a really angry person. And I just completely rejected the life. How it would work was by spending my entire life fighting against that anger, it would help me spiritually to grow in the opposite direction. That's kind of how it worked.
Mm.
But I completely rejected. I was like, no, I'm not. There's no way. I'm not doing that. And they respected my no. They said, okay, well, let's look at some other options. And so they showed me a set of parents I could have, and this seemed like a much nicer set of parents. And so we took a close look at what sort of people they were, where they were on their spiritual development. It's safe to say they had no secrets in this setting. Like everything about them was an open book,
Wow.
and they seemed acceptable to me. I thought, okay, this could be a okay fit. And then we started looking at, well, what kind of children could they have? And it became obvious that the genes were available that I could be a redheaded, and also I was really concerned about hurting other people. I think what happened is I hurt other people in a past life, and now I was really, really, really concerned. I didn't want to hurt anybody in this life. And so I liked the idea of being redheaded because the rare because it was kind of a rare color, and I wanted to be a girl because I didn't want to hurt other people. But the genes weren't quite the right mix. Like it wouldn't give me like I would have been like socially awkward. There weren't really that many genes for red hair for these parents. So there weren't really enough options to get what I wanted. So we started looking at, okay, well, what about a boy? And and what about a different hair color? And it became obvious that these parents, brown hair was just a dominant trait for them. So that gave you all kinds of that gave me all kinds of other options I could pick from for other traits that were also important. And then it kind of became obvious that being a boy was just a better fit for me. Like it just made more sense. And so we started looking at the details of what kind of body I could have. So first, um, I wanted to be like an extremely good looking person, like the best looking person on the planet. And my guide basically said, those genes, yes, you can do that if you want. The genes are available with these parents that you could be really good looking. But here are the downsides for you. If you're really good looking, women are going to treat you differently. You're gonna get certain opportunities, and you're going to be too promiscuous. Like you're going to be a promiscuous person. That's essentially what they told me. And there's like a spiritual downside to that was just self-evident. Being really promiscuous has a spiritual downside to it. Um, so we've scaled down the attractiveness to a little bit attractive, but nothing. No one's going to put me on a magazine cover. Um,
That's
and
funny.
then we started looking at intelligence, and it was the same kind of deal. I wanted to be like the smartest guy on the planet, absolutely brilliant. And my guide said, okay, those genes are available to these parents. You could choose that if you want, but here's the downside.
Mm.
If you're if you're that smart, you're going to become arrogant. You're going to look down on other people because they're not as smart as you, um, and you're going to have trouble making friends, and you're going to become an atheist. Essentially, that's what they told me.
Mm.
That's just how that would play out for me. And it was obvious that all of those had significant spiritual downsides. And so, just like we did with looks, we scaled down the intelligence to a smart person, but no genius. There's tons of people way smarter than I am. Um, and then we looked at everything else about this body, the eye color, the height, certain intimate details, like every little detail we looked at, and eventually I picked what I thought. Okay, this is the right pick for me. This is the right body. And when we had the body picked out, my guides they had like some plans for me. Um, they would show me events from previous lives and then show how that would be worked into this upcoming life. And they showed me all kinds of little, what I would call like clips or snippets from a previous life.
Mm.
And um, the clearest example I have is in a previous life, I had been kind of a stronger, muscular guy, and I got in a fight with a much smaller guy, and I beat him up pretty bad. And my guide showed me that. And watching that scene with my guides, it was clear that I was way out of line. I didn't need to beat up that guy. I could have easily avoided it. And it's like it was an unbalanced equation, or it was like a karmic debt. Somehow it was like an unresolved issue that now I needed to resolve in this life. And so my guides had planned for me to essentially have my nose broken when I was a teenager. I would get in a fight and have my nose broken, and it's kind of like that would balance out what had happened before. And through this process of kind of like receiving what I'd previously given out, like I would get an education. It would like help me grow. It wasn't any kind of punishment or anything like that. And there was other things I had done in the past, and they showed me how that would be integrated into this upcoming life. But with each of these scenarios, they needed my approval. It's like they couldn't force it on me. They needed me to agree to it, or else it wouldn't happen. But I agreed to that, and I agreed to some other stuff that was going to happen. Um, and when we were done looking at past lives, they had other plans for my life. They had people that were going to be involved in my life, and there was a lot of planning going back and forth. And my guides would plan ways that I could help other people, and then there would like be plans for how they could help me. So there was a whole lot of planning going on. Um, but I was also told that yes, we have this plan, but you will always have free will during your life. It's like you can alter the plan. Yes, there's this plan in place, but you'll always be able to alter it
Hmm.
and, make whatever decisions you want during your life. But there was lots of stuff worked out between me and other souls. Um, and when all these decisions had been made and all these plans had been set up, my guides asked me, okay, take a look at your entire life, what it would look like, what kind of decisions we made and how that would play out. And so we took a more holistic view of my life. And they asked me, are you sure you're willing to go through with this? Are you sure you accept this life kind of thing? And I agreed. I said, okay, I'm willing to do it. I'll go through this life. And it's like that answered my question. And I was back to, floating around in my backyard next to my body. And I had one more big question. I wanted to know, okay, well, obviously I've lived a bunch of lives, um, and I've been in this spiritual realm between lives. What was I doing between lives? That was kind of the question I had. Like what was going on? What was I doing before this kind of question? And I
Hmm.
was shown a number of different realms I'd been in. It was like to be there, like including the feelings I had and the what I was doing, that kind of thing. And a couple of the realms that I had been in were unpleasant realms, and a couple of them were pleasant realms. Uh, the worst realm that I had seen that I had been in, I had been kind of like I looked kind of like a monster. I didn't have arms; I had claws instead of arms, and I was with a couple hundred others who were just like me, and we were just fighting with each other. Like I absolutely hated them. I wanted to kill them, and we just fought endlessly. But no matter how bad we wounded each other, it's like those wounds would quickly heal, and but we just kept fighting and fighting. Um,
Hmm.
but eventually, something happened to me. Like I made the decision to stop hurting others. I wanted, instead of wanting to hurt those around me, I decided I wanted to help the others. And when that happened, when I let go of my anger and quit trying to hurt them, it's like a being of light or an angel from above swooped down and picked me up out of this group. And I asked, why did you pull me out of this group? And he told me that when I stopped trying to fight with others and kill them, I didn't belong here anymore. And he further told me that every one of those souls that I had been with, like every one of them would eventually leave this horrible place. And I saw some other realm I had been in where it's like it wasn't that bad. Like we were kind of unhappy, but we weren't miserable or anything. We were just standing around in like blackness, me and a whole bunch of other souls, and we were very confused. And there was beings of light going around, um, trying to help us, but we were all mistrustful. We had trouble accepting that these beings of light were there to help us. So we didn't want to accept their help. But eventually, one of them convinced me to accept their help, and I agreed to go with him. And so he got me out of that place. But then I also saw some happy realms I had been in. One of them looked just like a scene from Earth. It was like there was buildings and there was streets and there was I remember a lamp post very clearly, and the souls there were existing just like they had on Earth. They like were doing the same kind of stuff, but they were really really happy. It was like a perfected version of Earth.
Hmm.
But I quickly left that realm. It's like I recognized it as a midway realm, and I wanted to quickly leave so I could progress on to higher, happier realms. And then the final place I saw was a what I would call a city of light. It was like the entire city was made of a translucent light. The buildings were made of light. Every soul there was like a translucent being of light, and the happiness there was incredible. Like everybody was absolutely, um, just filled with joy, kind of thing. Uh, And with that kind of like it answered my question, and I was back to again floating next to my body in my neighbor's backyard. And I had the realization that after this life, I'm going to be able to return to these heavenly realms. I'm going to be able to go to one of these happy places, and that just filled me with joy. I was ready to go. I was I was done with this body. I was done with the earth. I just wanted to go back to these heavenly realms. But it's like as soon as I had that realization, this angel or being of light, whatever it was. I don't always know what they are because it's not like they had name tags or explained who they were, but it was this beautiful being of light came at me very quickly. Um, and I just want to point out one thing real quick about these beams of light. Um, they were translucent and absolutely beautiful, but because they were translucent, you could see like the surface of their face, which was absolutely beautiful, but you could also like see into them. And they had internal features just like we have external features. And these internal features had like a beauty to them that's hard to describe. And there was like an intimacy to it because it's like you could know them at a deeper level just by looking into them.
Hmm.
Anyway, he told me you are not to leave your body. And with that, I was back in my body and I stood up and I went home and I tried to explain this to my mother, but there's no way I could explain all this at that age. Um, And so I would think about this experience every day for months.
Hmm.
And after maybe 6 months or so, I was contacted by my guides again. I could tell who it was, even though it was like telepathic communication. I knew exactly who it was. And my guides explained that they needed to hide my experience from me. Essentially, they explained it as since I had knowledge about the spiritual realm, since I had seen it and I knew about it, like I could never develop faith. Like I couldn't live life the way life was intended to be lived, and it would cause me harm to have that knowledge because I wouldn't be able to develop faith. And faith is like so important. There's such a spiritual benefit to it that I was like robbing myself of that opportunity. Um, but they assured me that when I was older, I could get these memories back. And they further explained that in order to me, in order for me to really properly handle some of the stuff I had seen, they needed to make a change to my life plan. They had some added difficulties that they wanted in my life that would prepare me to handle some of this information that I had from my experience. But they needed my agreement for all of that. But I agreed to it. I agreed to their plan, and I forgot about this experience. Uh, I didn't think about it anymore. I I went through life. I got older. When I was 12 years old, I got in a fight. My nose was broken. It was a very difficult experience, but I had no idea that this was something I had agreed to before life. I got older. I went
Wow.
through other stuff that had been agreed upon during my experience, and then when I was 36 years old, I was reading a Newsweek magazine article about a neurosurgeon named Dr. Eben Alexander. He's kind of a famous near-death experiencer, and Newsweek had written a magazine article about him. But somehow, reading his experience, I accepted what he was saying. I don't know if I had a greater faith or if it triggered something in me. But somehow reading that article, it triggered the recall of all these memories that I hadn't thought about for 30 years. Um, and it's like these memories came back, and that was about 13 or 14 years ago. And since then, I've been trying to make sense of what happened to me and these memories and how it all played out. Um, and I don't know. I guess that's my story. That's
Wow.
how it worked.
Wow. Well, first of all, thank you so much for sharing the story. There's a lot to unpack here, and I've actually had even Alexander on the show. I had him earlier on in the soul inspired journey, so I actually may repost that episode at some point because I didn't even have really a following much. I had a little bit of a following at the time, but he was great to talk to, and yeah, he was someone that I had learned about earlier on about just because of the actual what happened, how his brain function was
Yeah.
zero, and he still
Right.
had this experience he had. Your NDE really does revolve around the pre-birth experience more than I've ever heard. The other interesting thing is, and I say this a number of times because I've kind of slowly become this um, near-death experience researcher in a way because I speak to people so often that have had them that the consistencies start to show up. The
Okay.
and I mean detailed consistencies. Yes, there are people who have the NDEs and they go out over their body, then they go to this place, then they might see grandma and grandpa, then they might like there's all these yes, that. But the first thing that stood out to me was I mean, you were these balls of energy. You were part of these energy balls that eventually you looked at a giant sun-like energy, which was God energy, God energy. I have had multiple near-death experiencers witnessed
Okay.
that itself. There were a few where they um they were coming out of their body, going to this different realms, and they had a knowingness that they were going to meet creation or whatnot. And the next thing you know, they're like, it's so gigantic, like they're right there.
Right.
And it's very, it like is like a sun. And I've asked in the interview or in the discussion, I've said, was that like, are you sure we're not just thinking that's the sun? Like, were you at the sun? And they're like, well, there's a resemblance, but it's not the sun.
Right.
Like, it's not the
Exactly.
sun.
Yeah.
But that is because, so, but for me, someone who's not had an NDE and I'm just looking at my physical life, I'm like, well, sun, that makes sense. But it's come up like many times, more
Okay.
times than I can count. So that to me is interesting, right? Because yes, I have a certain belief in what all this means and what it all is at this point. But when you start to hear consistencies, it it grabs me in a different way. It grabs that that analytical part of who I am, which isn't very much because I'm more I'm more of the touchy feely artistic side. But there's a part of me that's there, and so I just wanted to point that out. And I'm
Okay.
sure maybe over time, if you talk to other NDEers, you might run into that because that was I don't know what you feel about that, but it's common.
Yeah, I've only heard it, I think, one time that someone else saw something like that. So it's nice to hear that you've heard others saying the same
Hmm.
thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's not again, it's you don't hear it in every NDE, but just
Right.
the mere fact that I've heard it even however many times. That's really fascinating to me. It means that there's something verifiable there. That's just for me. For me. Other people may
Okay.
not see it that way, but I see it that way. Um, the other thing that's interesting, when you were out of your body, okay, so you're looking down at your body and seeing everything. Did you see the world in the same lens that you see it when you're in the body, or did it look different?
Yeah, that's a great question. No, it definitely looked different, but there was a lot of similarities. To me, it felt like the best way I have to describe it is like it was a parallel realm to this physical realm. So some of the stuff was still there, like the buildings were there. There was like I remember there was grass on the ground, but the grass in the spiritual realm I was in, it was like uncut. It was like it was kind of like messy and weedy. Um,
Wow.
and there was no fence between the houses in the spiritual realm, where there was a fence in the physical realm. So it was like the same and yet different.
Wow, that's interesting. Not to plug a show, but it's like Stranger Things, like the upside down, but not in a bad
Oh
way.
yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
I Some of that show, like some of what they have in that, it just really reminds me of this spiritual realm that's kind of like parallel to our physical realm. I feel like somehow they stumbled onto something that really I think
Hmm.
has some truth to it.
I think there's truth in a lot of television and movies. Same with the movie Soul. If you've ever seen it, it's a
Yeah,
Disney
yeah,
movie, and they have these souls that are lined. They're all kind of when you started mentioning the orbs, in a way, it felt the same. Like they make them look cutesy and stuff in the show, but
right,
like
right.
I'm like, that's interesting too, right? And they're getting ready to go down to Earth. Why would you? So I'm going to ask you some questions that just came to me, right? Like throughout this. In a way, it's like if you know the game The Sims or like these kind of games out there, not to bring up gaming out of this, but you kind of experienced a similar creation method. You're
Right.
picking the parents, the personality traits, what you're going to look like, those kinds of things. Have you ever thought about that? Like that,
Yeah,
like, because we're creating that in this place as a
right.
game, but it's similar, is it not?
It is, and uh, I think there's so much about stuff that we do that I think inadvertently it's like it mirrors like a bigger spiritual trait. And the
Hmm.
idea that you're going to play this game, well, you get to pick some traits in your character. You're not just thrown in there. And that's to me, that makes perfect sense because that's how it is in the spiritual realms. We kind of like we're involved in picking these avatars or these bodies that we're going to exist in for 80 years or whatever. To me, it's a perfect fit. It's like that's a great analogy.
Do you remember why Earth stood out? To what was it about Earth that was
No, I
so,
don't know
if you
what it
remember that?
was, but it was like I was absolutely positive. Like there's no question for me. But no, I don't know why I picked this over any other planet I could have gone to.
I ask it only because, I've come to discover that not only is there these spaces that we're residing in, with whether we're in this place. This is just what I'm told, but that there are like layers, if you will, of dimensional layers of
Right.
or realms, right? And I've been told, even though Earth is a beautiful space and place, that it is of a lower realm in a sense. So if you were to just completely rip the fabric of this space out, we wouldn't be in the higher dimensional space. That's why a lot of
Right.
people say when they have the NDE, they go through this. And I'm starting to wonder, like the tunnel. I'm like, I think we're traveling through some type of dimensional space. Some of us remember the tunnel, some of us don't. I mean, when I say us, I mean people who've had NDEs. But I sometimes wonder, are we moving into something that's, are we coming back up from being down here? And
Right.
I'm sitting here thinking, you chose Earth. There was no question. You really wanted it. And the first thing that came to me is it could be that it is a beautiful space to come in. There is some heavenliness to it, because some people, when they explain heaven, there is similarities to what we have here, but it's almost like this is like a grayed out, dulled version of what that is. And at the same time, because we're in that lower density level, we have a lot more learning to do here. Like I think it's
Right.
harder here. And that could be why you chose it, because you knew you'd be leveling up, in the game. I don't
Right.
really call it
Yeah,
like that, but
it's like
yeah,
going to the gym. If you go there and lift the little weights, you're not going to build a lot of muscle. But if you lift the big weights, you're going to build a lot of muscle. Well, by coming to this really difficult realm, we can grow our spiritual strength way faster than we could in an easier place.
right. So you knew that, yeah, you could go experience this on this planet and have this experience, but it might take 5 or 6 lifetimes to get what you could get in one here. I'm
Right.
putting it in perspectives for people to understand, but that's kind of what you're saying, right?
Yeah, I completely agree with that, what you're saying, but I don't know if that's why I chose Earth or not.
Right, right, absolutely. The I'm going to tell you what stood out to me throughout your experience, that when you were explaining it, when you started talking about the lower realms of, the fighting realm, that kind of thing, which I will say, in some hellish type experiences I've heard, people have witnessed those type of creatures or beings where there's kind of this constant fighting, and yet people are pulled apart. And I don't like getting into that area of it too much, because some people get triggered a bit. But then it's like they're back and they're like, "Oh, I'm good again." Oh, and then it
Right.
happens again. And like, what am I
Yeah.
doing?
Yeah, that's
I,
what I saw.
yeah, and so I've spoke with
It,
people who've had hellish experience in that realmish area.
yeah, I mean that's what I experienced is that I was in one of these realms, and it's like if you get injured, your injury it's very painful, but it quickly heals. I mean, that's exactly what I saw.
Which, if you're in that kind of space and in that lower vibration, that lower energy, yeah, you heal, but then you got to go through it again, right? You have to
Right.
keep, and that does sound like almost torturous in a way, right? So when you started talking about that, I was immediately like, I don't want to go there. And I guess when you think about it, when you feel it in your soul, the fact that you're here now in this realm and the person who you've become in this world, do you feel, and you may, this is just a guess question, maybe possibly, but do you feel like you would have to go and suffer through that again? Or do you think that that is something that was happening before you were incarnating into these type of high, like maybe this is higher than
Right.
that, if that makes sense?
Yeah, what I see it that was a version of a realm of the afterlife. And I think in the life before that, I had been like a really, a terrible person. Like I wanted to hurt others. I wanted to kill others. And I maintained that same desire when I, passed away from this physical realm. I still wanted to hurt others. I still wanted to
Mhm.
kill others. And now in the spiritual realm, I maintain that. And so I went to a place with others who had the exact same mindset. And in a realm where everybody wants to kill and hurt each other, what do you think it's going to look like? And that's what it looked like. It was horrible. But what I hold on to is that I was able to leave that realm. Not only was I able to leave that realm, I was directly told by this being of light that all of the souls in there would leave. Like none of them were stuck there forever.
Wow.
And so I really hold on to that that to me is proof that God doesn't want anyone to stay in some kind of condition like that. It's just a temporary way for us to learn and to shy away from those horrible tendencies, and we'll all be able to move on to higher, happier levels, as time goes on.
That's definitely the way it feels. It feels like that's part of this process, is that we're evolving higher
Right.
into right. And maybe some of us fall again. Maybe that
Yeah.
happens, but we don't want to do that, right? We want to keep lifting up.
Yeah,
Um,
I view it like the stock market. If you ever see a stock market graph, it
right.
goes upwards. But
Right.
there's dips. It like screws up sometimes, but it recovers and keeps going
Right.
upwards. I think our spiritual journey is kind of like that.
I like the message you have with that though, that there was a knowingness that they would get out of that space, only because some people lose people in this life and they think about how they lost their
Right.
lives or what happened, and they can focus on the fact that they were not in a good space when they were here. And yes, possibly when they go to the other side, there's something that they go through, right, in another realm, but
Yeah.
that the idea is that they're growing through it, and that they're going to that that the idea is that they'll eventually lift out of it, that they're not going to
Right.
always be stuck down in that space. And that's part of the process as to why they're in that space.
Right. Yeah. Not only
Hmm.
is that what I saw, but it makes perfect sense. Like why would you trap somebody in a place like that? That just doesn't make any sense.
What age did you say you were when you started to remember the memories?
I was 36,
Wow.
and
So
now I'm 50. So it was
yeah. So when you're 36, what, it just started coming back to you, or how did that come back to you?
So I was reading this article by about Eben Alexander, and it just triggered the recall. So I would say about half of those memories, it's kind of like they came back right away or very quickly, and then a bunch of others would trickle in over time. I would say there's less and less as time goes on, where I don't really remember much new these days. But
Mhm.
it was pretty intense getting all those memories back, and I consider that the best day of my life is getting that knowledge back and understanding what the heck's going on here.
So there was this moment when your guides came to you and they said, "Sorry, we got to erase your memory." It reminds me of like the Men in Black or something. Like they got the light.
Right,
You're gonna shine the light. It's gone, right? And so
right,
we're gonna erase your memory. Which so that means from that age up until you're 36. From that age up until you're 36, you lived the life
right.
that you were living as Aaron. And when this came online, I guess the question is how did your NDE and pre-birth memories change how you live your day to day? Like, did it start to shift you as a person? Were you already a good person? And I don't mean to get too personal about it, but I'm trying to wonder if there was, because we get this life dictates a lot in our life. Like things happen to us and it affects us and it changes us and
Yeah.
then boom, you get hit at 36 with this knowledge. I'm wondering how it changed for you.
Yeah, I think before I got these memories back, most people would say I was a decent person. Okay, I was married and had kids. I tried to be a good father, tried to be a good husband. You could talk to them. They'll be happy to point out that I'm not perfect. Okay, um, but I think I've become a better father, a better husband, a better person through this knowledge. I definitely I view helping others and being a good person much more important as a much more important uh, issue than I did before that. Like to me, that's kind of like the whole focus of life is just to become a decent person, be a decent human being. And so I hope I'm a better person than I was 14 years ago, and I certainly want to be.
Did you have a sense of a mission or agreement that you made before coming here? I don't know if I missed that or anything, but do you have like a sense of like you're on some kind of mission or anything?
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's a number of agreements that I made that I remember some of those details. So I understand a little bit of, why I'm here. My primary task or reason for here is just to get myself straightened out, just to become a decent human being.
Hmm.
But then there's also all kinds of agreements I made where I would interact with other people and somehow that would be helpful to them, or it might be helpful to me. It works both ways. But yeah, there's definitely stuff I was sitting here to accomplish.
And if you look at this, us right now having this conversation, we're sitting here talking in 2026 on Zoom, this conversation, this podcast. To me, to you, and to me, this is a real experience. This is our real experience.
Right.
Does this feel as real as that did, or vice versa?
No. No. The spiritual realm definitely felt more real than this. Like when I left this body, I was much more alert, more intelligent. I felt more like me. I felt more free, more natural. Everything about it just was more intense, more vibrant. Um, so, I kind of view this world kind of like being asleep. Like this is kind of like a dream world, and that's the real world.
Hmm. So it kind of feels like you're in a container.
Yeah. Yeah, I view this body as a temporary container, but it serves a purpose. There's a reason we're here, and I try to hold on to that there's a big benefit to us from coming here and living these lives.
I've always wondered because I've had a few say. I had someone one time say to me, um, they said, "What did they say?" He said it was an amazing episode. Oh yeah, he referred to himself as like a genie in the bottle. Like
Right,
when he came out, it was kind of like this, like what? Like wow. And it blew his whole like belief systems apart too. I can't recall if he was atheist or what, but there was definitely like a shift in his understanding of his true self. But it was this feeling of being let out of a bottle. And then when he came back, it
right.
was like being put back into the bottle. It was quite painful from what I've heard. Did it feel that, do you remember going into the body at all? Do you have any recall of that?
I think how it worked was this being of light who kind of like sent me back. I think what happened is he told me to look down, and I looked down, and somehow that triggered me to come back into my body. But it was so fast that I don't really understand what happened or how that worked. But boy, he sent me right back to my body. It was real quick.
These beings, what are your thoughts and feelings about why they are who they are and what they do? Like, do you feel like they were different from you?
Uh, yeah, that's a good question. I don't really know. I either view them as like souls just like us, but they've progressed much further, or maybe they're fundamentally different. I don't know, but they certainly seem to be like at a higher level than what a typical person's soul is wherever a typical person's soul is. These beings of light or angels, it's like they're at a much higher level.
Wow. So you've gone from age 36 until now. I'm assuming, uh, not really if not that you want to go anywhere, but I'm assuming the fear of like the end of this physical life, that you don't have a fear that once that happens that's just non-existence at that point. You don't feel that.
Oh, not at all. There's no doubt in my mind that everyone is going to continue to exist after their bodies die. The only thing I'm scared of or fearful of is my own ability to hurt someone else. Like uh, that's what I'm scared of. Do I lose my temper and I hurt somebody or I'm mean to somebody when I shouldn't be? That's the only thing I'm really concerned
Wow.
about is just controlling myself and being a good person. But I have no fear of death whatsoever. Uh, that's just not even an issue for me.
So you have more fear in being a human being and what a being, because that's being human, right? Losing your
Right,
temper,
right.
that's a human trait. So you have more fear in that, in having a reaction that you won't be happy with, than death itself.
Right, right. Now, there's some caveats there. If I was to die, I think it would negatively affect my kids and my wife. So I definitely want to avoid that. I'm not trying to, if I die, I think that would hurt some other people. But just for me personally, I'm not at all concerned about dying. Like it just doesn't concern
Mhm.
me.
Interesting. Interesting. This is a really interesting conversation because I just going to say a few more things here. The fact that the thing that comes to me is, I understand where you're coming from. First of all, I understand that. But
Okay.
then I go, but you've also seen different realms. So do you not, I mean, right now you're living the life of Aaron in your life, in your home with your kids and your family, in your life. And it's
Right.
probably pretty safe. I don't know your whole personal life, but for the most part, you're living a safe life and getting through
Yeah, yeah.
life. If you're not here and Aaron is gone and you're the spiritual side of who you are, is there not the fear that you're going to end up in those realms and that you're scared that, oh my gosh, it's wide open and now I could become this? And or do you feel like there's more of a control over that? Like we have more control than we think.
Well, I don't think my mindset is the mindset that a soul would have that results in them being in that kind of horrible realm. I'm like
Mhm.
a nicer person. I'm like actually trying to be good to others. With that kind of mindset and worldview, that would fit me. But let's say I'm just totally wrong and I ended up in some horrible realm. Well, I saw that I wouldn't be stuck there forever. And
Mhm.
I also saw that there was beings of light or angels or whatever. They're there to help you. And if you just ask for their help, they'll pull you out of this kind of situation. And so if I ended up in some kind of horrible realm, I would ask for help. And I trust that God or an angel or some sort of being of light would be there to assist me and get me out of that horrible place.
Wow. This has been amazing. So what do you do with this knowledge at this point? Because people
Right.
do so many different things that have had NDEs. Some of them are part of different groups. Some of them do all these different things. I'm wondering, what do you do with this at this point?
Right. So I try to share my experience. I've written a book. It'll be freely available to anybody who wants it, or you can buy it on Amazon when it comes out. I have a YouTube channel. I do interviews like this. I try to share my experience and I view figuring out our existence and life and death kind of like assembling a great big puzzle. And I feel like I have a couple puzzle pieces, and I'm just trying to give them out to anybody who wants them. Um, so I'm pretty easy to find online, Aaron Thomas Green, and I've tried to share my experience, and I have a book where I'll go into more details and explain my experience. And anybody who wants to can reach me, Aaron Green 1975 at gmail.com if they have questions or want to talk about something. But the only thing I know how to do is to try to share my experience when I can, and then just what I view as really even more important is just to be a decent human being. Like we know what's right and wrong, do the right things, try to help other people, try to be a good person. Like that's all I know how to do.
You said you had a book. What's the name of the book, or have you written the book yet, or is it just
Yeah, the name of the book is Emerging from the Light, and it should be out, I think, in June. I'm working with an editor now to hopefully wrap this up and get it published. I'll be happy to. I've been working on this thing for like 7 years, so I'll be happy to have it finally out there.
That's amazing. That's great. And I love when I hear that kind of stuff because that's one way of getting your story out, right? Right now you're on the
Right,
podcast, which I appreciate. I kind of felt silly asking that question because I'm like, what do you do with this now? Well, you're sitting here talking to me, right? And we're putting it through. But I'll tell you,
right.
this will still be on the record. We haven't ended the show yet, but I would say, you know, I'm in the 200s of episodes. So I probably out of those 200
Okay,
episodes, I probably spoke to 150 NDEers, maybe 100, 150 NDEers. And one of the beautiful things that I get is I get to meet everyone's personality. And like your personality is
okay.
in check. And I should ask you, did you still feel like Aaron? Like, does your personality come with you? Because I've been told that usually they feel like it does. I didn't know if you felt that
Yeah,
way.
oh yeah. I still felt like me, but I felt like a more real, better version of me. I guess that's how I would
Wow.
describe it.
Yeah, because like one thing that you have about you is you're very direct and you're not that other end of ears sugarcoat anything or anything, but I do think everyone's human and some people when they
Right.
have um a remarkable experience that's different than many other people is that sometimes they have a hard time delivering it. So they fluff it up a
Yeah.
bit or they just to deliver. You're just straight you're just straight to the point. And I think a lot of people would appreciate that. You're just like,
Okay.
this is what happened. This is how it happened. This is what, you're very direct that way. It's, probably I don't know if you're an analytical type person or kind of a left brain type person. I don't know what you've done in your life, but it, it,
Right.
it comes through in this conversation. Cause again, I speak
Okay.
with people of different kinds. So I appreciate you. I appreciate you putting out the message the way you did. And I think that's why I reached out to you when I saw a little bit of your message online.
Okay. Yeah, well, I work as a engineer, and I think so. That's kind of my mindset.
Yeah.
But then also, one of the side effects of trying to write this into a story, write this into a book, is like I've thought about, okay, how do I explain this? How do I explain that? A lot of this stuff is kind of confusing to try to take this experience that isn't. It's not the same as our earthly day-to-day life, and try to put that into words. It's a challenge. And so by trying to write a book, I think it's made me better trying to just get the words out there that make some kind of sense that someone can understand.
Right.
At least that's what I hope.
Yeah. Well, no, I appreciate it. I think it's amazing. I think that the book would be great. That's why I asked. I always like to find out. I can also put if you have a YouTube channel, I put that in the show notes so people know how to kind of find your information. But I
Yeah,
love
if
it. Yeah,
you search Aaron Thomas Green YouTube, I should be easy to find.
perfect. I'll definitely put that in there. I end each show the same way, and I say, why? Okay, you've seen a lot. You've been on the other side. You've seen all these things. You've even seen a city of light. To me, that sounds kind of fun. You've had these experiences, you've seen that. And we've kind of covered on some of this, but if you came up with something that people could be left with, what is the main reason why we come into this world and deal with the things we deal with here?
Yeah, so what I saw, I think answered that pretty clearly. We start out as simple, ignorant souls with no experience at all. And we need to develop compassion, kindness, honesty, integrity, generosity, service, forgiveness, self-control, all these kind of traits. And by coming here into this physical reality, we can very quickly exercise those principles and strengthen ourselves in terms of all of those. And essentially, that allows us to move to higher levels of spiritual enjoyment and happiness. And so we come here because we can increase our happiness significantly by going through this experience.
Amazing. I really appreciate you going through it today with me and explaining it to the audience. I always talk to the audience, say please continue to like, share, and subscribe to the Soul Inspired. We get amazing guests like Aaron coming on the show. Make sure you follow him up. And if anybody wants to contact you, I'm sure you can. You did give out your information, so I'm sure they can
Right.
reach out to you, kind of like I did. But thank you so much for coming on and explaining your experience.
All right. Well, thank you, Joe. I appreciate it. And I also want to say I really appreciate what you're doing with this channel. I think it's great that you're helping experiencers get their message out there.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that.